Mr. Kaluarachi to give a further information about why we are meeting today and what's the purpose of our day today, and move on to the session. Over to you, Mr. Kaluarachi.
Thank you. Very good introduction to our friend Sachi Wickramage. I call you Sachi because that's the family name to me. Sachi, thank you very much for joining this webinar with your busy schedule. I know you're a very busy person. And Sachi is not a stranger for APID because he used to come most of our activities here when he's in Sri Lanka. Of course, his wife as well. I want to recognize Shamara's name also here because she is also helping us. So without further taking more time, so we have to make use of Sachi's time more. So I hand over to Sachi to go ahead with the topic what is selected today. So over to Sachi. Okay. Thank you, Sachi.
Thank you very much, sir, and thanks, Kaushali, for that nice introduction. So it's really wonderful to connect with everyone who's joined with this session today. And this itself is due to the power of technology. And I'm here in Sydney. It's actually 7:30 past p.m. and you guys are there around 2 p.m. But due to the technology and how it has empowered us, we are in a position to connect, communicate, share knowledge, and empower each other. So really glad for the opportunity, and I look forward to taking everyone through a couple of slides and to share a bit of knowledge about what I would like to disseminate today. So I would first share my screen and let me get this started. All right, I believe you can see my screen now.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, that's right.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So the topic for the day is to look at what are the best of technologies and strategies to steer a business through a pandemic. Now, this is a very, I would say, extremely important topic due to what we are going through, this COVID-19 pandemic, something no one was able to predict, but it was at our face unexpectedly, and we all were forced to re-engineer the way we do businesses, to rediscover ourselves as individuals. Over the past couple of months, businesses had to technically figure out how to quickly pivot and quickly to adjust to these ever-changing situations. During today's webinar, I want to mainly structure it to 3 elements, and the fourth to open a forum to us to discover about these 3 elements. First, let's look at a couple of impacts of COVID-19 for businesses at a global scale. Then let's look at examples of how some businesses were able to transform amid the pandemic. And then let's focus on what are the key takeaways we can look at. And finally, let's have an open discussion forum where we can have a Q&A to enlighten each of us. I just did a Google search and I typed COVID-19 global data. And this is what I saw. It says 54.4 million cases, 35 million recovered, and 1.32 million deaths. This shows the sheer scale of the pandemic. However, what it doesn't show is the fact that it is also a silent killer for businesses. Further to our webinar, you will understand the sheer impact it had on small and medium as well as large-scale organizations globally. This is a very important and very interesting graph I came across during the research I did in preparation for this session. It shows the global GDP impact and the countries that are at the verge of a recession. Mind you, this graph was is based on information as of Q1 of 2020. So it can be even worse by now. Now, most of the countries here that are highlighted in red, these are not developing countries. That's something I think we all would have understood just by looking at it. The ones with the bright dark red are the developed countries. Global economies like United Nations, Europe and Middle East, Canada, and other parts of the world. One might ask the question, why is this happening? I can't get an answer from you, but I would want you to take a couple of seconds and think, why is this happening? Why are these strong economies almost about to enter into a recession? One answer to that is most of these countries, small and medium businesses are the lifeline of the economy. And however, the lifeline of these small and medium businesses are its ability to trade every day. And one thing we all are aware of is with the border closures and lockdowns, the entire supply chain was disturbed. And those businesses that were technologically not ready to adapt to these changes and to utilize the best of strategies have collapsed entirely. And that impact has trickled down to the global economy as well. And this is a slide which is showing us the perspective of unemployment. And again, if you ask the question, why are these countries having such unemployment? You know, these are developed countries, and it's a given fact that these countries do have the best of crisis management policies and practices in place. Specifically, if you look at the United States, the pre-COVID unemployment rate was 3.7%, and now it's at a 10.4%. And similarly, the other large countries who got badly impacted with COVID, like Italy, from 10 to 12.7%, and France, Canada, UK, you name it, you can see the impact. And these are not economies perspective. The sheer scale of the impact can be measured in terms of the decline in the GDPs of these countries. And these numbers are in US dollars, millions. If you can, United States have a drop of 267,700. That is $267 billion drop in the GDP. And the entire European Union having close to $290 billion drop in the collective GDP. So this shows how much of an impact it has globally. And hindsight, it shows the impact COVID-19 has had on the businesses. And as a result, it's trickling down to the global economies to have these negative numbers because of the inability of businesses, most of the businesses, to survive, adapt, and transform to these changing situations. I'm pretty sure some of you might be familiar with these logos. Hertz, JCPenney, J.Crew, Virgin Australia, Virgin Galactic. These are some of the victims who had to file bankruptcy during COVID-19. These giants, now companies like Hertz, JCPenney, these are more than 100-year-old companies. Hertz invented the concept of renting motor vehicles, and they're out of business. They filed for bankruptcy during COVID-19. These are alarming factors. Now, if giants like Hertz, JCPenney, and Virgin Australia, Virgin Galactic kind of companies can collapse, how can normal businesses survive? How can small to medium scale businesses, how can startups survive? And at the same time, the flip side of the coin, why did these companies collapse? Them having all the resources, all the money in the bank, why did they collapse? These are very strong questions for us to have a deep thought about. The answer to this is they were unable to turn these massive challenges into meaningful change. I will explain this later in detail. The COVID-19 is a massive challenge. In trying to address challenges, you need to make it meaningful. Otherwise, the change is not absorbable. Change is not communicatable. Yeah, if you can't understand it, you can't communicate to your top management. You can't communicate to your employees. You cannot communicate and convey the message to the customers. Now, these are the 10 industries, or rather the top 10 industries with the highest number of bankruptcy filing during the COVID-19. Restaurants to construction, real estate, healthcare, going all the way up to even telecommunications, which is quite questionable. Telecommunication companies going out of business during a pandemic. There are so many things that we need to drill deep into to understand what really went wrong. Now, these 10 industries, some of them we can understand, it can have an impact, like oil and gas. Yes, the global transportation stopped, but how come retail? How come telecommunications? These are important questions. And if you look at this graph, it shows that nearly 100,000 establishments that were temporarily closed during the pandemic are now completely out of business. And based on statistics gathered from Yelp.com, which is a review website, in August, it says 65,000 companies permanently closed their business, even though they were at the beginning thought of it as a temporary closure. So the sheer size of business that are collapsing due to pandemic is by no means a simple number. It's unfathomable. It's unbelievable. Now, having spoken about the bankruptcies, I wanted to bring these few logos I'm pretty sure you're aware of. Now, these companies like General Motors, Chrysler, Marvel Studios, these are examples of companies that came back from a bankruptcy. Obviously not during the pandemic. So we had to leave the pandemic aside, but to look at companies who have been bankrupt and how have they been able to come back. And there's a lot for us to learn from this. General Motors, following the financial crisis back in 2008, it was one of the largest automobile manufacturers filed for bankruptcy. And not only General Motors, Chrysler, which is another luxury automobile manufacturer in US, they had to file bankruptcy back in 2009. And these companies went bankrupt because they were not digitally ready to transform. And you might even wonder how come Marvel Studios went out of business. And this is the time where Marvel was not in the movie business. Marvel Studios was doing the comics, and they were mainly focusing on the print medium. And how these companies resurrected from a bankruptcy is because how they chose their strategies carefully, how they adapted the best of technologies carefully, and how they transformed their businesses to be leaders in the industry. So General Motors ventured into using the best of technologies, and they even became leaders in automated self-driving vehicle technology research. And Marvel Studios, rest is history. We know what they did with the Avengers series and the Spider-Man series and all the movies that we all went to theaters rushing to watch as soon as they came to the market. Right? So being bankrupt itself is a good, it's not a good thing, it's a lesson, but that is not the end. Companies still have the ability to come out stronger at the end of the tunnel. There is always light. And I want to take this example mainly because of, I'm pretty sure not all of us are even aware of, Apple was a company who did not file for bankruptcy, but it was almost there at the verge of being bankrupt. And it is thanks to Apple's dearest competitor, Microsoft, who pulled Apple out of an unavoidable bankruptcy by putting $150 million back in 1997. And now, you know where Apple is at. It's one of the most valuable companies globally with market capitalization of over 1.2 trillion US dollars. So the thing for us to focus as a CEO of a company or as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you have to look at how to outmaneuver uncertainty, how to navigate through the business while taking care of your most important asset. That's your human beings who are involved in the business, your employees, your customers, while resurrecting your business. So today's CEOs are faced with the overwhelming competing challenges and uncharted waters that they are facing due to the COVID-19. Out of necessity, CEOs must prioritize the now, which is supporting their people, primarily their employees and customers, and their suppliers, addressing the supply chain disruption, stabilizing revenue, and aligning their business with evolving demand and identifying new growth pathways to the businesses. COVID-19 pandemic is, at the beginning, it was just a health and humanitarian crisis, and businesses had to rapidly adjust. And now we are talking about focusing the next step. It's about the word normal cannot be even considered normal anymore. There is no such thing called normal anymore. It's about figuring out how to evolve and how to rediscover the businesses. There is no returning back to normal for businesses, because what was normal before is very different to what normal today and what it will be there in the future. It is not going to be normal for businesses. It's not going to be normal for consumers and customers, and it's not going to be normal for even governments. So it's redefining the new market circumstances. And the challenges are actually the journey the businesses must take is to be the agile methodology to be taken forward. Businesses must not be clunky. They should be really agile. They should be nimble. And they must focus on connecting with changing customer habits, pairing with people with opportunities and resilience, and restructuring for global expansion, and primarily focusing on utilizing the existing resources to seize new opportunities. That's where I wanted to take a couple of examples. The first one that I'm showing in this slide is Lufthansa. And not only Lufthansa, there are other airlines like American Airlines and United Airlines. These airlines are now using passenger planes to do cargo delivery. Right? Because I think it's a known fact that more than 90% of the airlines went out of business if they were focusing on passenger transportation. But one thing that remains the same is the global supply chain must continue. So if the global supply chain to continue, the transportation of goods must happen. And for us to increase the transportation of goods, now there is a new vessel available, which is the previously heavily utilized passenger transportation methods can now be utilized as increased bandwidth for goods transportation between countries to strengthen the supply chain. Now, you might recall as soon as the pandemic hit, there were times in our supermarkets, lots of shelves were empty. You might recall there were no toilet paper. A lot of essential goods were running out of stock. That's because of the immediate impact of the supply chain. So nearly half of the world's population under lockdown. Consumers are putting orders online now. They're not even visiting their usual shopping malls or even grocery stores. So these online orders sometimes are to be delivered from overseas or even from, if it is a large country, across borders, across states. So this is a good example of how airlines are utilizing the existing resources to seize new opportunities. And then look at what some of the hotels are doing. Now, one thing we all are very common and very familiar these days is working from home, which was not very famous those days before the pandemic. And working from home became the only method if we are to continue to work. But that came with its own challenges. And I'm pretty sure all of you have seen lots of messages being forwarded on WhatsApp and Facebook about how accidents do happen while working from home. Sometimes husband is working in the table, children are running behind, dropping things, and wife is right next to the kitchen table. So there are a lot of embarrassing accidents can happen. And trying to utilize these opportunities, some of the forward-thinking hotel chains do offer remote workers concessional prices to work from their hotels. Obviously, no one is going on holiday, so hotels are pretty much empty unless they are being used for COVID-19 quarantine purposes by the governments. So in terms of utilizing the existing resources to seize new opportunities, this is an amazing move some of the hotels are taking in developed countries, allowing very low rates like $20 or even $15 for the full day for someone to go to a room and have a peaceful working day. So there are no disturbances from your spouse, maybe your husband or wife. So no annoyances from your children. And you don't have to worry about all those buses and lorries and everyone running near the road disturbing your meeting with the customer remotely. So your Zoom calls, Google Hangout calls, as well as Microsoft Teams calls can be taken peacefully by attending to them in a hotel room. And another good example is General Motors. Remember, we spoke about General Motors a while ago, a company which went bankrupt. And I spoke about them being leaders in autonomous vehicles these days. They are using the Chevy Cruise, the self-driving vehicle fleet, to deliver meals to vulnerable people in San Francisco. Now, what they're doing is they're using the best of the technologies. This is the most cutting edge, and it's a technology that is still being evolved. Right? It's not even fully proven to be road ready. But during a pandemic, there are lesser vehicles. So Cruise, General Motors identified this opportunity. And at the same time, they identified a gap. There are people who are vulnerable, elderly people who cannot have access to food. So they quickly bridged this best of technologies and the opportunity in trying to fulfill a need, a dying need in the society, and trying to make it a social justice as well. And not only this, there are so many other examples. Now, look at what we are doing now in the education industry. APID being a leader, connecting entrepreneurs from overseas to share experiences, knowledge across the student base, thanks to APID's forward-thinking approach in using technologies like Microsoft Teams and Zoom. I'm connecting to everyone in Sri Lanka here from Sydney. And there are other examples as well. Think about the gyms, the fitness centers where people were crowded, taking care of their physique earlier. Now they're not even allowed to go there. So these gymnasiums and fitness centers had to rediscover their business model. And some of the most forward-thinking businesses adapted to an online streaming methodology, creating subscription models, either to group classes or even one-on-one. And I'm pretty sure even in Sri Lanka, we have enough examples of liquor companies producing hand sanitizers, because hand sanitizers were more in demand than liquor for the first time in history. But that was a need, and that is what was required. And that is the agility of a company who can survive a pandemic like this. It's thinking out of the box. Now, here in Australia, one of the leading winemakers have completely changed their business to producing hand sanitizers. They're even exporting to other countries. But they did not try to go by the title saying we are the best winemaker in Australia, which didn't have a purpose during a pandemic. So they had to quickly adapt to a new need and try to fill a gap, being agile. And it's about the speed of execution. And I want to take this example as well. This is, you might even laugh at this. Now, Qantas Airlines, which celebrated its 100th year anniversary as of yesterday, they thought of not being just using their fleet for goods transportation. They were the first to introduce first class and business classes in airlines, and they started selling the first class, business class care packages, including the signature Qantas pajamas, for $25. Why? Not everyone was able to fly first class or business class in Qantas. And now anyone, just by paying $25, can have a memorabilia with them. This is catering to a need. Again, it's not an essential thing, but Qantas made lots of money doing this. Obviously, people were not flying, but people who could not even afford to buy business class, first class air tickets bought the $25 care package, which includes the Qantas signature pajama as well as the perfume and the toiletries, which is made iconic like a prestige collection. Now anyone can buy it. As well as Qantas went the extra mile, creating the catering that the airlines do. Think about during a pandemic, what are we to do with the catering unit? So what Qantas did was they started delivering airline food to doorstep at an unbelievable price of $10 a meal. So this is how companies think out of the box during a pandemic. It's not just thinking of their core business and how to pursue through this dark cloud and try to do it stronger and faster. It's thinking out of the box. It's trying to do what you haven't done. Try to do what your competitors have not done. Now, I wanted to come to this and try to bring some summary to what are the examples that we looked at. In trying to steer through a pandemic, this is a model I always use, which is to focus on three things: your business strategies and how you invest on technology, with the main aim of creating value across the board. I'll explain this a bit more, and I'll take an example as well. Now, when it comes to strategies, I go by three principles. I look at my employees first, my customers second, and my business third. And few strategies that has worked for me over years during the startup that I have founded over the years back in Sri Lanka as well as here in Australia. Number one, it's about putting employees first. You need to empower your employees so that they can become ambassadors for your company, for your brand. This is extremely powerful than spending thousands of, hundreds of thousands of money on marketing. It's about creating your employees, or rather transforming your employees as brand ambassadors. How can you do that? You put your employees first. And you had to, the moment you really put your employees first, they start understanding that. And you get multiple benefits out of that. You get the most motivated, most courageous employees who would always come to you with new ideas. Not that as a manager, you have to push them. You do not have to push an employee who's a brand ambassador for you. They would come up with ideas about how to survive the pandemic, how to safeguard the company. What are the new things that we can experiment? And second, I believe in building very strong customer relationships. This is nothing common. Everyone might say you need to build strong customer relationship, but I'm talking about being hands down, making stronger customer relationships. I can ask the question, how many businesses really know about their customers? They might have done customer profiling, they might have done customer segmentation, so they might have an understanding of who their customers are, but do they really know who the customers are? Do they get their customers involved in their business development process? And I always try to get into the customer's shoes, because unless you get into the shoes of the customer and look at the problem yourself and firsthand, you would never be able to create a product or a service that can not just satisfy the customer, but to delight the customer. There's a big difference between just satisfying a customer and delighting a customer. You need to invite customers to take the journey together with you. Not to push, not to pull the customers, but to take them with you on this journey together. And if possible, even try to co-create with customers. I have examples like this even in my current company that I'm working, I4Tradies. We even got our customers as our investors. We've created certain modules and segmented and gave to different customers and observed their feedback. And we validated across sectors, and then we selected the features that the customers really love. At the same time, listen to the customers and build the features and new requirements that they wanted us to be putting into our product suite. That is co-creation. And that is how you put the customer into the value chain. And that's how you build strong customer relationships. It's not just sending an email on the birthday. It's not just telling that we put customers first. It's getting customers into your equation, into your business DNA. And third, in growing the business, make sure to use the technology as an advantage to the maximum. You need to accelerate technology investment, to be innovative, to do your product differentiation, to give your competitive pricing, to stand out of the rest of the competition. And also at the same time, ensuring sustainability and retention of your customers. So when it comes to strategies, these three things: putting customer first, building stronger customer relationships, and utilizing technological advancements for the business growth. And moving on to the right hand of the triangle, investing on technology. I always believe in investing in technologies, not just for the sake of the technology being the most cutting edge, but the technology being able to contribute to an increased customer experience. So even in I4Tradies, we always focus in using the best of technologies in terms of how can it make the customer experience better? And what are the technologies we can use to make the customer experience better? It's not just to make the product better, but the customer experience better. Because if the customer experience is good, even if your product is not good, customer will help you to make your product better. So in trying to do that, you have a loyal customer base. The moment you have loyal customer base, you have revenues coming in. And as a business, you're financially not struggling. So you're in a position to invest deeply in technology, and the technological investment is perfectly aligned with your customer needs. And the second viewpoint when it comes to investing in technology is I always believe in creating omni-channel communication with customer. Because customer needs to be communicated not by our own time frames, not by using our own channels, but by using the channels that the customer prefers at the specific time. For us to do that, we need to understand the customer. For example, during the weekends, customers don't want any phone calls, and they don't want to be disturbed with someone trying to sell a product, or rather you send an email over the weekend. But if it is during a work day, maybe send an SMS, or based on the time of the day, based on statistics, we can even use the channel that the customer is spending time on. Now we are talking about even social commerce, like is the customer spending time on Facebook Messenger or Instagram or WhatsApp during a certain period of time? Use that channel to communicate to customer. It's using the channel the customer spends time to communicate to him without trying to reach to the customer using your own preferred communication channels. So when it comes to technologies, these are the two things I focus on. Make sure the technology that you use is 100% in alignment with customer experience to be a better one. And use the omni-channel communication to customers to make sure your message is conveyed in customers' terms, not in the business's terms. So that way it never becomes an annoyance to the customer. It becomes a value addition. That's what you're focusing at the bottom of the triangle. And if you really look at it, I said value. I did not say value addition or value creation. I mentioned create value across the board. Now, one might answer, what is across the board? You had to create value across the board, meaning even for your competitors. When you put the best of strategies and technologies together, you will have a foundation to create a winning value across the board, including your competitors. Now, I would take examples from my current company, I4Tradies, to give perspective to this. So let me jump into another slide and talk more about it. Now, in I4Tradies, I'll give a background about it. We are a customer experience management for the trade services, real estate, and strata sector, primarily focusing in Australian economy. So we connect trades businesses, their employees, their consumers, together with organizations, creating a unique ecosystem. When pandemic hit, or rather, let me step back. Before the pandemic hit, that was back in January, February, we had plans to do several massive scale events in different states of Australia. And I had to fly to Europe to attend another event, which I'm part of, this World Summit Awards. And that's when the pandemic has put the global transportation ban, and I barely got back to Australia without being stuck in Vienna in March, 27th of March to be precise. I got back to Australia. So we had to put all our plans as I4Tradies on hold because technically you can't travel, you can't do anything. And on top of that, our revenue came, listen to this number, came down by 75%. And we are not a multi-million-dollar company. We are a startup. We are just a 4-year-old company running on the recurring revenue that we have. When our revenue came down by 75%, well, we had only two options. One, close the shop and say that's it and figure something else out. Or second, rediscover ourselves. And we can't simply say, it's when the pandemic closes, let's open the business again. It has to be a new beginning. So we thought of looking at it as a new beginning. Now, the good news was we had a very strong technology portfolio. We had our apps. We had our strong technology ecosystem. So we wanted to look at now, if I take examples of one of our verticals, trade services being in Australia, in developed countries, the skilled workers are a profession. It's an essential service, actually. Now, if you look at a business or if you look at a residence, whether it's a pandemic or not, if there's something wrong with your electricity or if there's something wrong with your hot water system, you want to get that fixed. You can't wait till the pandemic is over. So these are essential services. And our customer experience platform has channels to connect these consumers with such needs with service providers of these skill services. Now, one thing we thought of was, let's do an advertising campaign to promote our services heavily on TV and radio. So what can we do? Usually what we do is we ask people to download our app, sign up for it, register. Then it's like Uber kind of an experience. You can see based on your geographical location, who are the service providers in your area. They get verified by their rating and license and compliance as per the government regulations per each state. But then again, we thought that's what we have been doing earlier. Now, if we start putting advertisements on the TV, but think about, remember the previous strategy I spoke about. It's about thinking about your customer first, right? The three things: customer, employee, and the business. But for the customer, if we start putting advertisements, now this is the time in TV, you start hearing all these distressing news about different countries being locked down and the cases going up. Who would really focus on a TV commercial? And even if they focus on a TV commercial, would someone even be worried to do a simple thing like downloading an app and creating an account? So we wanted to think on behalf of the customer and get into the shoes of the customer. So during a pandemic, customers' mindset is different. Even simple things like downloading an app and signing up now becomes annoying, difficult, and it's cumbersome. So we didn't want to just push customers and say, we have the best app. You just go to Google Play Store or Apple App Store, download it, sign up. It only takes 1 minute or 30 seconds. Instead, we questioned ourselves, what are the technologies customer is already using, and what can we do to add value to the customer without putting a burden to the customer? So we, instead of using the best of the newest technologies, we step back, because the utilization of technology during a pandemic should not be the most technologically advanced one. It should not be, or rather, it does not need to be the latest machine learning algorithm. It doesn't need to be the best AI algorithm. We went back to the SMSs as a channel. Why? Because no customer wants to do anything to send an SMS. It's very easy. So we ran a campaign saying, if you have a problem with your electricity or your plumbing, or if you have any other skilled work requirement, just send an SMS to a short code that we have decided. We call it I4Tradies Emergency Response Center. So we positioned this new service as an emergency response center. We created a call center around it. We created an automated SMS-based registration process. So for example, if I take myself and there's something wrong, think about now, all of a sudden there's a power failure and we are in the middle of a webinar. So I need this fixed immediately. And I don't have time to go download an app, because obviously my Wi-Fi router is not working. My internet might be questionable, but I still can send an SMS. So I4Tradies Emergency Response Center, what we did was, we told customers to do only two things. Send an SMS to a number that we specified. Let's, argument's sake, let's say it's 1234. So send an SMS to 1234. And in the message, mention only two things. First, type your short code, postal code, because in countries like Australia, it's all running by the postal code. In Sri Lanka, you know, we talk about Colombo 7, Colombo 5, Colombo 4, likewise. But beyond Greater Colombo, we do not have the postal code basis. But in Australia, it's fully running by the postal code. So we said, first type your postal code. Second, with a comma or a separator, type what's your problem. So my message to 1234 now can be, my postal code is 2000. My message is, I don't have power. I need this fixed ASAP. Now, when someone sends a message like that, it goes to our automated SMS channel and it detects the short code, postal code, and it knows the problem. It reads the SMS and using an intelligent algorithm, it matches the service providers. In this case, the certified electricians who are providing 24/7 support in my postal code 2000. And it immediately responds to the customer saying, we found the best service providers in your area and we have already alerted them. You will hear back from them in the next 15 minutes. Because we built a backend system to provide this lead to the trade service providers, telling that there is this person now waiting for your service in the next 15 minutes. So we did this. We had the same platform earlier using an app where people can download an app, but we wanted to simplify. During a pandemic, the things that were simple earlier were questionable. People were stressed. They wanted simple, non-disturbing ways of getting their problem solved. And we call this Emergency Response Center. And to explain more about it, Remember, in the last slide, we spoke about this creating value across the board, right? And how did we create value across the board? For the trade services, I4Tradies has a platform as well, but this new emergency response center can now send new job leads even to our competitors. So a trade service provider do not need to be even registered with us. They can be using a competitor's platform, but we even give them the new job. Because why? Even the trade service providers during a pandemic are distressed. Their job requests have gone down, so their revenue is low. They are looking for more job, and customers are looking for more work done. So we remove the barrier. We do not give job only to our registered suppliers. We even give it to our competitors across the board. If they want, they can take it and use their own platform to do the job. So we created value across the board to our customers as well as to our competitors. And what did that do? It transformed our business, and it helped us to steer through the pandemic and even get listed as examples of how startups steering through the pandemic using not the latest technologies, but the best of technologies and the best of strategies. The strategy was to think customer first, think of your suppliers, think of your competitors as well, solve the problem to your customers, your suppliers, as well as even your competitors. So because during a pandemic, it's not about competing. And I would like to quote something, a famous quote, which is, you might have heard of this: competition is a law of the jungle, but cooperation is a law of civilization. So we wanted to cooperate and coordinate even with our competitors to create an increasing value proposition where everyone wins during a pandemic. And another thing that we did was, our usual business operation was, we are a company, we design, develop our software products, and we sell our products. So we have a sales team as well. Our sales team goes across all states and onboard all these trades business owners. And we even change our business model because we wanted to look at other companies who have stronger assets and resources in trying to do what we want to do better during a pandemic. So we separated ourselves and we put us only into the container of a software development company creating a product. Our entire sales channel, we removed our sales channel because we did not have a strong sales channel. Instead, we created a license model and we licensed the technology for Australia and handed it over to one of the leading sales companies, trade service companies operating in the Oceania region. Oceania is Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Fiji, and other countries. So now we collaborated and joined forces, creating extreme value addition, where we can focus in what we are good at, which is building technology, building software products that really resonate with the customers. And we are coupled by the best sales team in Australia, who are connected to the trades business owners. And this is joining forces, collaborating, creating extreme value. So as a startup, that's how we became spotlight, and we were highlighted by a lot of articles by big giants, even the leading banks in Australia, as to examples of how a small startup steered through the pandemic by using the best of technologies and the best of strategies, not to create more competition, but to create more cooperation. So having said this, I'm conscious of the time. I want us to have time to have a Q&A as well. So I would conclude my official session here and would like to invite everyone to ask a couple of questions, and let's have some collaborative time and see where we can take it forward from.
Wonderful. Sachi, I do have a few questions that have started coming in while you were talking and while you were presenting in the content. First, thank you so much for this wonderful and insightful session and sharing these details as to how you have been sailing through this time and giving that knowledge to all of us. especially our students and especially the new entrepreneurs who are with us today. So with that, let me go into the questions that have been coming so far.
Sure.
So the first one is that who is your role model that motivates you to face challenges during these difficult times?
That's a very good question, actually. But one thing, I personally do not believe in a single role model. I believe in learning from everyone. It can even be when I was a lecturer, I even learned certain things from my students. And obviously, I had the luxury of being mentored by legends like Mr. Kaluarachi, where I'm a proud student once upon a time. And so as a principal, I do not look at an individual and as a person to study and simply follow the same path, but I look at multiple people. It can be industry leaders, it can be even people at your level, it can be even people that who look up to you. There's always a lot for you to learn from anyone. And in fact, there are examples of during my tenure in Sri Lanka when I was heading a software company. Once I had this, the gentleman who was responsible for the security of the building. There were certain things I observed from him, and I went to him and said, "Uncle, I learned a lot from you because of how you do what you do, or rather the way you do." And he was very, he was really touched. And he said, "Sir, I didn't think you would even talk to me." I said, "Of course, if there's something to be learned, it should be learned and it should be acknowledged."
Exactly. All right, so let's move into the next one. Okay, so can you explain social commerce a bit more?
Okay, the first thing is I'm not the best for that, but I can give a heads up, and I'm pretty sure there are experts to take it to deep. Now, social commerce is a buzzword these days. It's about commerce is doing business and social is doing it socially. So social commerce implies doing business on platforms like Instagram, Facebook, or even messaging platforms like Viber, even WhatsApp. Good examples are, I'm pretty sure most of the students are spending a lot of time on Instagram. And if you go to Instagram now, if you follow your famous brands, these brands that you worship, since I'm talking to Kaushali, I'll take let's say, fashion brand. Think of your favorite fashion brand. If you follow it on Instagram, in addition to observing and enjoying their images, you have a button there saying click to view more. And when you click on it, it says, okay, this cost you X amount of rupees. And if you want, you can click from there to buy it. That is, in a nutshell, social commerce. And another vertical of social commerce is good examples like even Cargill's Bank launching this Viber app. In Viber itself, you can communicate with Cargill's and get these orders done via chat. Those are examples of social commerce. But there's a lot more to it. So I would leave the experts to explain more about it.
Okay, thank you, Sachi. And the third one that is coming to us is what are the best contingency actions if technology fails when serving a customer online?
That's actually a very good question. So that is why the key word is online, right? That question had online. That itself is a mistake. Why? Because you might question why is online a mistake. Online is good, but it should not be solely online. That's why I spoke about having omni-channel communication with your customers. You need to have the ability to choose which channel to communicate with your customers at which day, at which time. You need to build that business intelligence. So omni-channel communication is your ability to talk to the customer online, via chat, or via emails, or even via phone calls, or video conferencing like this, or even reach out to them via SMSs, or even using messaging services like WhatsApp, Viber, or Messenger, or even go to the level of physically walking to the customer's doorstep and meeting the customer, or picking up that phone and calling them.
Okay. So moving to the next one, we've got quite a few coming in, so I'll keep on reading, but I do not have an order as such. This is just as the order of how it came in.
Perfectly
so please share your experience of being a part of World Summit Awards.
Sorry, what's the question again?
Yeah, this is actually something to do with what we spoke, other than what we spoke today. So please share your experience of being a part of World Summit Awards.
Yeah, I can have another 1 hour to talk about this topic.
I'm sure you do.
So as of now, I play two key responsibilities. One, I'm spearheading the World Summit Awards Australian chapter, where I'm responsible in selecting the best of technologies in Australia, and every year selecting the best 8 technologies across 8 strategic categories, and to nominate them to the Global World Summit Awards criteria. So I'm in charge of selecting what are the best technologies from Australia to represent at the UN level. And the second responsibility is I'm part of the grand jury panel. World Summit Awards, if I'm to explain a bit about it, it's an initiative which operates in more than 190 countries as of now. That's an, how can I say? It's more like a measurement stick, which is empowered by the United Nations to identify the best of utilization of technologies across countries and to recognize them, reward them, and to bring them to the stage where they can meet like-minded people and to amplify their effort. So, for example, in Sri Lanka, the main body is ICTA. That is what selects the, you might be aware of a voting program called I4Tradies. So the winners of I4Tradies every year will be nominated from Sri Lankan government to the World Summit Awards. So World Summit Award is a nomination-based program. No one can apply to it directly. Every country must provide, rather nominate the best 8 applicants every year. Where at a global level, there is a jury panel of 80 jury members, which I'm part of as well. Do the evaluation. It's a sheer scale of applications that you come across is unbelievable. It's a massive load, and it's extremely challenging and extremely interesting at the same time. So there's a democratic evaluation process. So at the country level, you get evaluated. Only 8 per country, regardless of the size of the country. Sri Lanka gets 8, Australia gets 8. So is US, so is China. So that you get selected there. And when you go to the next level, the WC online jury, 80 members representing all parts of the world select 400 out of these thousands of applicants coming through. It's a short list that they create. And that short list is forwarded to the WC grand jury, which is a 16-member panel. And I'm lucky to be part of that as well. Where we select the winners out of these 400. We select 40 winners, which is 5 winners out of 8 categories. And we invite them to visit the WC Global Congress, which is held at different parts of the world. This year's one was in Vienna, where that's what I was explaining about. I barely got back to Australia before the pandemic. Last it was in Portugal, and it is held in different countries. So at the event, at the Global Congress, these winners have the ability to compete against winners and be global champions. So my experience about World Summit Awards is being one of the best, and it keeps me really humble. There's a lot for me to learn. I every day learn by being part of World Summit Awards, because I would say I'm really lucky to be in a platform like this where I get to see the best of technologies every year, where I keep pushing my boundaries, pushing my envelope about what are the best utilizations of technology. And another important thing is World Summit Awards is not just about identifying the best of technologies. It's about identifying how technology can be used for the betterment of the social impact. It's about how you do good with technology. And that's what makes it even more interesting. I think it's a lengthy answer itself.
Wonderful. Indeed, it will be quite a motivation for everyone who's looking forward to follow these footsteps of you in the same area. So we do have with that 2 questions I would like to combine because it's in the same area of interest. So what is your advice for a very new young entrepreneur is the very first question, and let me combine that together. Is there any tactics, techniques, and methods that you would advise to young students like us to practice from a very good start with regard to innovation and entrepreneurship?
Okay, so
innovation would sum it up saying, what's your advice for a very brand new young entrepreneur who's looking to follow these footsteps of you, and or maybe going beyond those levels to the international forums?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First thing is believe in yourself. That's the first thing. You must believe you can do it. You might think, okay, I'm still small, I'm just graduating, The others are at another level. Who cares? Everyone who's there was once here, right? So if anyone can do it, all of us can do it, right? So believe in yourself. And there's something really good about believing in yourself, because only when you believe in yourself, then you can amplify your skills and competencies. We all do have skills and competencies, just that we need to identify what are those, and we need to focus on those, keep polishing, and do not get distracted. Don't try to do everything. Do not try to do everything. Identify what you're good at, keep polishing that, find enough inspiration. Inspiration can come from your daily habits. So I have a daily habit of waking up early morning and going through a couple of websites and channels and podcasts that even to date, I go through. That is to get my morning energy. So inculcate habits like that, which would help you to have a more of a learning focused mindset. And as an entrepreneur, it's about being believing in yourself and your ability to build a strong team around you, because you as an individual is one. So your ability to convince people is the technology, or it's not a technology, it's a tactic that you have to master. Ability to convince people. If you can convince people around you, then you can convince more. And if the more you can do, you can you can create them, rather convert them to your employees, and they can do so, creating a fan pool of customers. So it's about ability to convince people. That's a tactic to master. That's something to really focus on. So believe in yourself, try to build teams that believes in what you believe, and then you need to have resilience. Things do not happen overnight. You don't become the most successful entrepreneur just by luck. It takes time, it takes pain, it takes its own ups and downs. I didn't come here overnight, and the steps I have to go through are not easy as well from where I am to the next step. It takes courage. So you need to have the resilience. When you're punched down, believe in yourself, get up, go forward stronger. So these are a couple of things.
Thank you so much, Sachi. With that, we move on to our last question for the day. Does your company or the application provides online certifications and training on the new software technologies that are available worldwide?
Well, our company is in a different business. We do not provide certifications. It's a trade services platform which we provide. Think of it like Uber, right? Where we have 4 pillars connected to it. So in the trade service sector, there is a consumer, there is a trade service provider who's a business, and there are employees who are like subcontractors working for these businesses, and there are organizations who seek benefit of these services as well. So we are in a slightly different business, but we do have licenses and compliances inbuilt, making our platform the marketplace to find the most certified trade service providers, because we have built our platform with trust and compliance and transparency. So those are the pillars of our business, and that's what allowed us to be an industry leader, and that's what allowed us to even rediscover ourselves during pandemic, not to result as a startup who got down and who was shut down during this pandemic, but became stronger and moving forward faster.
Right. So can you mention your accessible sites and the links that if someone is interested, if a student would want to know more about your product, how can they reach out to you?
The best thing is to Google my name, and I think I'm pretty much available on any platform. And if you Google Sachi Wickramage, you can find the company that I'm attached to, all the profile that you can reach out to, my Twitter, to everywhere. And feel free to drop me a message. And based on my availability, I'll be more than happy to reach back to you.
Thank you, Sachi. Thank you so much. So on behalf of Appit family and the directorate, I take this moment to thank you sincerely especially for this insightful and awakening session. And we hope to reconnect with you soon, back again. And I would like to check with Mr. Kalwarachi. Would you have any concerns, any thoughts that you would want to share now that we are in the end of the session?
Yeah, with the time is important, and the Sachi is also busy. I think it's time for him to enjoy his meal as well. Okay, Sachi, thank you very much for your contribution, and we'll hope you can get more and more insight from you in future. Thank you very much for Sachi, your contribution.
Thank you very much, sir, and thank you very much, Kaushali. I really enjoyed the session. Hope everyone got value.
Thanks a lot. Of course, wish you all the very best. And with that, audience, students, thanks a lot for joining us. Hope you had a wonderful insight and a new thinking coming to you with this. So hope to see you back again in another webinar on the same technique. And we'll see you, Sachi, later.
Thank you,
Take care.
Kaushali, coordinating
All
it.
right.
Thank
Good
you,
afternoon
Kaushali.
to everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Be
Thank
safe.
you, IT people as well, doing all the back.
Yes, we do have a massive team. I'm sure Sachi has been with us been in touch with us some time. But we do have a team. We are only seeing only 3 faces, but there's a massive team behind this, putting everything together. So thank you so much on behalf of the whole team again, and hope to see you back again.